All right, welcome back to the Built on Air podcast. We are in season 23, episode 4. Good to be back with you. Myself, Ali, and Camille are here. And we have a special guest with us, Martin. Welcome, Martin.
Hi, everyone.
Nice to have you back. We had you on a couple seasons ago, I believe. Remind us, where are you located in the world?
Yeah, I'm in Europe, in Czech Republic, right now in Prague, but I'm traveling a lot. But yeah, right now I'm in Prague, at my hometown or city, let's say.
Very cool. That's awesome. Cool. So every week we do a different segment, and this is our week for bringing on a guest and having them share some cool stuff with us. So I will give an update before we start. Last week we broke some news on the show of a new superagents.com that Airtable launched, and kind of demoed that, and maybe we'll show that in next week's episode again. But anyways, I've played with it a little bit more. My general impression is kind of cool, kind of interesting. I don't know if I would use it for a whole lot. I probably am not the primary use case for it. I'm not doing a ton of reports and whatnot, but kind of cool, but a little disappointing of like that they're putting energy and effort into that product that seems a little bit outside of what we know Airtable to be. So I don't know if any of you have opinions.
Yeah. I saw a comment from someone who was happy about the recent automation subscription feature release, and they were like, wow, it's great to see that while they're doing AI stuff, they're still releasing features for the main product. But I don't know about everyone else. I think that feature is broken. So I wish they'd stop expanding so they could focus on one thing and then do it well.
Yeah, we'll talk on that one next week. We'll showcase that. So
absolutely. There was one thing I saw someone post about Super Agent that I hadn't really thought of, and I kind of liked the idea that they had, which was they kind of thought of it as a way to like get a launching pad for how to approach solving a problem, which I thought was really interesting. Like there's somebody, I can't remember who it was on LinkedIn. They said they had been trying to solve this problem for a long time and had no idea how to approach it. And so they just typed that into Super Agent and then got like a report on like basically how other people have solved this problem over time and like what your things should be. I think that was a really interesting way to use that tool.
Yeah, cool. Well, we'll maybe dive deeper next week on our highlight of new functionalities and features and whatnot. So awesome. Well, with that, Martin, if you want to share your screen and give us, before you dive in, give us some context, who you are, what you're up to, and a little bit about yourself, and then you can jump into what you've got to share with us today.
Yes. Is my screen showing well?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. So I am a Airtable freelancer. I provide Airtable solutions to clients. I've been doing that for past 2 years, maybe more at this point. I jumped into the Airtable world after being a web developer for a long time. I have been kind of busy in the startup world, and oftentimes we had the need of some, efficient internal tooling. And back then, I found a Airtable as a like a really convenient solution. And then when I wanted to transition to different area, maybe take a small break for just pure web development, I thought actually I could build solution on top of Airtable, combine like my knowledge of JavaScript and web development together with like actually providing expertise with Airtable that I've learned over time when using it internally, and then I did a deep dive into the various kinds of aspects of Airtable over time and provided different kinds of solutions to clients. But as I did my Airtable freelancing, I also was like a little bit missing the pure web development stuff, and then I decided to actually build my own products for Airtable. And the first one was actually PowerSafe. So that's a Chrome extension for Airtable, not just Airtable actually, but you can connect various kinds of destinations. You can send to also Notion code and webhooks, but Airtable was the first one. Also, Airtable has the best connection over there, and so PowerSafe is like a very universal, advanced web clipper, which you can use anytime in your web browser and save to different places. And you can optionally also use AI to have better scraping. So that's what I was mentioning before, or what I was showing here before. But over time, I found out like I want to actually have also a different kind of product to offer. And that's why I started building a PowerSync, which is not a Chrome extension. It is more of a backend service, a monitoring service, and it's built on top of the Airtable webhooks. So the Airtable webhooks is a feature of that Airtable has as part of their web API. And it's a little bit, I would say, advanced, like to use for most people, but they are powerful. And PowerSync is one of the ways how you can kind of benefit from some of the unique features of Airtable webhooks without doing a deep technical development yourself. So I think I have walked the hard path, and I have the sort of the platform to offer like some unique features that would be hard to offer, or how to maybe implement, or maybe even impossible to implement through maybe Zapier, NA10, and other solutions. So the one solution that I can actually demo is the schema changelog that allows us to collect schema changes in your Airtable base and send them to Airtable or elsewhere. And over time, as you connect your Airtable base and make changes in your Airtable schema, like you add tables, you rename tables, you change fields, delete fields, change formulas, add options to single select fields or multiple select fields, the changelog will track that, and in real time it will create, for example, Airtable records back in your Airtable that create a chronological set of changes that has happened. So let me show it off real quick. I will activate this service here, and so I can connect Airtable, and I can select the base. I think I have one demo base prepared, so I here select a CRM base, and now I confirm the base that I want to collect, which is this one. And now I say that I want to send the schema changes back to Airtable. I could also use a webhook or maybe send them to Slack, but Airtable is usually the best option here. And I will say that for these schema changes, I want to actually create a new table because I don't have like an existing table that I would use for that. So I will create a schema changes table. And the mapping is sort of prepared here. So I will just confirm. And now because all of this setup is done, I can activate the engine. And that's pretty much it. So then like PowerSync has set up a Airtable webhook on my behalf, and I can open the base. I can see that there is this new schema changes table. Potentially in the future, if it's technical and this is something that would be maybe irrelevant to a lot of users, I could maybe hide this table. But for now, I'm keeping it here. And now I can test if it's actually working. And maybe I will create some kind of new field here. Maybe in the clients, I can create maybe important like checkbox, VIP client. And so I've created a new field, and I can see here field created, and there is a description here which says like this field VIP is created. So that's the basic wiring here. If I now would like delete this field, then I should get a different, like a new description here that the field VIP was deleted. So this is in its like simplicity how it works. I can maybe, because I don't actually have like a created add field, maybe I can actually create one here, created time. And so I get a new field. Maybe I can sort by created, so the latest changes are at the top. And actually it even logged here that like in the schema changes table itself, I've created a field created. Another interesting changes that might be interesting to track is that, for example, there is a field called email. Maybe I would want to have like a formula, which is email domain from email. And so that gives us a maybe interesting like website from the email itself. And here in this, I'm seeing actually the formula as it is being created, right? So it's tracked in the description here. And if I go back and maybe adjust some detail, actually there is nothing to adjust, but for the purpose of the demo, maybe for some reason I want to track a different character, it's probably gonna break. Well, actually it's not breaking. Oh, it's partially break. But in the schema changes, we should be seeing some diff. It's not perfect. There is maybe still something to improve here because there is these like internal markers not translating. So sometimes this kind of drops out a little bit, but I would say still this is better than nothing. So this still gives you some information that something here has changed. And there's like other granular things, like maybe I will try to add a different type of status, maybe to remove. And so I have added a new option here, and I should be seeing as well that field status is updated and there is a new option to remove. So that's the functionality in its entirety, like in its core. And maybe we can improve it a little bit better if we use the power of Airtable custom extensions. And I will create a new extension. I could choose custom. And I have this one. It has at the moment wrong name because it was some different extension that I was playing with before, but I have created this custom extension for the schema changelog. It's running locally still, but I think I need to still fix in this case. It shouldn't be, the source shouldn't be clients. The source should be schema changes. And I think I also need to pass a little bit more information. So not just event ID, but also the collaborator and maybe the table ID. And now if I refresh, yes, this is the final result here. So this is my custom interface extension hooked up to the schema changes table, and it shows the result in a little bit nicer way. So I can browse around chronologically here and maybe collab. It's by default, it's grouped by day and then by the person making the changes and then by the table. And because it's a Airtable extension, then I can maybe search here, maybe search for email, and I can see that these are the email changes, recent email changes. So that's it for the schema changelog itself. Potentially I could demo more, but this is the kind of core functionality.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So useful. I so often have tried to track down, like within the manage fields tool, you can see the person who last modified a field, but like if you're trying to be like, who changed this formula potentially 3 months ago, like that's huge. Like that's bravo. I'm very impressed. That's awesome.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
It has unfortunately happened more than once that someone has deleted a whole table, and the trash in Airtable doesn't last forever. I believe it's 7 days. So record history, 3 years. Trash, 7 days. Interesting decision. So it was reported to my team, I want to say like 10 days or so after it was deleted,
Mhm.
which means you couldn't restore it from trash, which means you had to rebuild it. So
Yeah.
not great, but things like that would allow you to do even more beyond that. Now you have a record in your table that says something was deleted. Well, you can set an email alert based on that and said someone deleted a table, and you immediately know, hey, don't do that and pull it back from the trash. So
Yeah.
even beyond what you've just shown, there's some flexibility there for whomever uses the service to sort of expand it using native Airtable capabilities to give you even more visibility.
Yeah. I think
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think the approach from my perspective, like sending the data back to Airtable, it just gives the most power for free. I could have my own maybe UI somewhere, but the main issue is that I would have to store more data on my own, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to store more data than I need. So I'm at the moment, the service is storing only technical metadata like record IDs and some base transaction numbers, Airtable webhook ID, and others, technical IDs like this. But then once I can, I delete all of the data I can, and because I'm sending the data back to Airtable, it's I want to kind of return the data as fast as possible. And also, once you have the data in Airtable, you can use them in automations, and also in, for example, in Airtable Omni. So with PowerSync, with this schema changelog, you can go to Airtable Omni and ask who was the last person who changed this field, or who deleted this table, and you were gonna get an answer. Technically, Airtable could do this natively, right? But because of some, I guess, internal how the state is managed, well, this is a trick how to surface the right information to the table itself, to your base itself.
Yeah. So yeah, 95% of people are probably not gonna dive into webhooks themselves. That's where a tool like yours comes in handy. Let's talk a little bit. Let's maybe go deeper into webhooks. I'm curious. I've played with it a little bit. I know actually, do you mind sharing your screen again? And let's go to the webhook documentation. And I'd be curious to know like lessons learned, wish list items. I know it gives some information, but it doesn't give everything. Talk us through what you've learned. I'll put that up.
Yeah.
Dealing with webhooks. What's the good, bad, and ugly of webhooks?
Right. So webhooks are powerful, and I think like from Airtable's perspective, they are well designed. There's when you set up a new webhook, you create it dynamically through the API itself. Let me see. They create a webhook, right? So you send a request with some certain parameters, and you dynamically even say to which URL you want to receive back the pings, right? But so once you set this up, the important thing to mention here is that like you set up the notification URL, but maybe it's a little bit different to a lot of other webhooks that you might have tried in different services, because here you only receive a ping. The Airtable will at first only notify you something has changed. You subscribe to some specific data types, maybe the table data or the table schema, and you define the scope and certain details. But then back you get only a ping that like something has changed, and so you have to do a step number 2, which is to the list webhook payloads. So as the step 2, you start fetching the payloads, and then you have to, as you do that, there is something called a cursor, and cursor tells you it's a certain number that tells you how many payloads there are, and you track that. You have to track that on your own end, maybe somewhere in a database, and you will store some kind of number which tells you what is the amount of payloads you have fetched so far. And when a new ping comes from Airtable, you then start fetching new payloads only from the previous cursor, right? So you have to manage this cursor, and to make it even a little bit more complicated, sometimes Airtable can send multiple different pings, even for one change, or as changes happen, you can receive multiple simultaneous pings, right? So if you would have this set up in some maybe N8N or maybe in Zapier, you could like very quickly find out that, oh, like Airtable notified me 3 times and why was it 3 times? But this is considered to be your problem. Like you need to have a solution so that you don't create duplicate records, and so that when a ping comes, you start iterating over the payloads, but you do that in a idempotent way. The server should make sure that there are no like duplicate actions created, and so you have to protect yourself against that. You iterate over these payloads, then you get there is a specific payload object that you receive. It's not completely the same as the webhook, as the normal Airtable record, right? You might opt in for some data to be already included in the payload object, but it depends. It depends what you have configured. The unique thing about webhooks is that you get the source metadata, which is the user of who created the record, who updated the record, or who created the field, they deleted the table. So in this case here, you see the user, which is a unique thing about webhooks. You couldn't get this another way, like through the REST API.
Yeah. Another unique thing about webhooks is for linked records, you can also get the name, the primary key name of the linked record, not just the ID. Is that correct? That's my understanding.
Right. It's possible. I cannot recall, but I can attest that it has a slightly actually modern shape in some ways. So yeah, I would believe this is true.
Yeah, I believe for linked records. Yeah,
I think one of the biggest frustrations I had using webhooks was, and these are things that you touched upon, but the idea of using a cursor to determine where you are in the history of anything being sent to that webhook. There's also a parameter once you get a response back that says might have more.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
not it definitely does, not how many cursors are remaining. It might have more.
Yeah,
and if that's true, you got to query it again. So that's fun. And then for certain field, we built something in-house for our enterprise, but it wasn't focused on schema changes. It was more data changes. So someone's email went from @Hotmail to @Gmail, for example. Which you can do with webhooks. It's the exact same implementation of how you create a webhook. You just send different parameters. But for certain field types, a single select, a user or collaborator field, updating it is sort of one-click action. So that's one update. If you're typing in someone's email address, each keystroke is an update according to Airtable. So that is 8, if it's 8 characters long, that's 8 different pings you're going to get from the webhook, which means your cursor, you know what I mean? You don't want to update it on that first. You want to wait till it's done. How do you know when someone's done typing? You don't.
Right. Yeah. That's completely true. And you can add the logic, right? You can have in programming there is this concept of debouncing. So you could potentially have this debounced, but again, so this is, you're in programming land. Like I'm not sure if I could be able to handle something like debouncing in Zapier or N8N. So I think it's safe to say that once you're dealing with webhooks, it's probably better to just send it to a custom server, and or maybe if someone is like really advanced with N8N, maybe they can work around this. But for me, it's just much easier to deal with stuff like this in a plain web server. And yeah, there's
the other thing is handling your token. They expire after 7 days. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
How do you yeah, so you've got to constantly be refreshing it.
Mm-hmm.
It does refresh itself if something hits that webhook. So if someone deletes a table on like day 3 of your expiring, it'll reset until the next 7 days. But if nothing happens to your base schema, you will have to have this running on a cycle.
Right. Yes. So like on my end, I have it like running as a fallback, just in case. And so as you hit this refresh endpoint, it gives you back the new expiration time. So again, I have a job that runs every few hours, and it checks the webhooks that are in dangerous territory, and it refreshes them.
Yeah, that's something. It's kind of silly that they require that, but more that you've got to do.
Another actually interesting aspect is that if, for example, for whatever reason, you don't send back a proper response for the webhook, it will disable itself. So maybe your server has it crashes, right? Which can happen every once in a while. A server can crash. Maybe you are using a service like Cloudflare or other, and there is an outage, right? Worst case scenario. And then Airtable tries to contact that notification URL that you have set up, and it's getting back like 503 like gateway timeout or other kind of error, or maybe you have legitimate application error on your end. So Airtable will like disable the webhook. It will stop. It will say that enable is false, and then you have to kind of enable it back. And this is also a little bit tricky, because then you have to be self-aware about, oh, my server crashed and now it's available again. But what if the webhooks were disabled? So you have to also run some checks and check the status of all webhooks and maybe enable them again. So that's another thing that I have, is that on every server startup and every once in a while, I also like proactively check the status of all webhooks, and in case they are actually disabled, I enable them again. So it's I can see the reasoning why this is being done, but it can also, like, if you don't know it, right, then it can be unhappy surprise, sort of.
Yeah, that's a lot to maintain.
Yeah.
That's why most people won't come into this world, which is probably a good thing. What information is still not available in the webhook? There's still some data that Airtable doesn't expose, right?
Yeah, I cannot.
So I don't know this for sure. If it does, then this would be awesome. But my understanding is, if you've ever used the timeline feature where you have records that are predecessors of each other, I'm running into this right now, where we want to be able to know what it's configured for as far as the buffer in between records, or if it's how the relationship is, like first to last and stuff. And my understanding is like that information is not given either through the API or the webhooks.
Right.
So I think there's still configuration data on fields.
From the web API, you can query what the tables are in a base, and it will tell you the date dependency settings overall. That's not per record. That's just this field is the duration field, for example, and what the list of holidays are. But that's it. My thing that's missing from the API, both web API and webhooks, There's nothing about syncing. So there's no indication that a table is synced from another source. And when a view is marked as a shared link or a sync source for a different table, it's not anywhere. So one of the biggest things you can do to cripple a base is to sever a sync source, and there's no way to be alerted. It just sort of happens silently.
Yeah. Or even who the owner of that sync is, because it's tied to the user who set it up. And if that user leaves the company.
Yes, we've run into this several times. It will disable your sync if whomever set it up leaves the company, even if every other creator in that workspace is still there.
Yeah.
Wild.
That's something, we've reported back to Airtable.
Interesting. I found in the admin panel the other day where I could actually look at my syncs. I always saw where the shared links were, but I found the actual list of like, this view is being synced to these 3 bases, because you can do it on a field level, but if you and you can see that it's enabled for a view, but within the base itself, you can't tell actually where it's going to unless you look at add a field to that view only, for example. But yeah, that was useful. But for me, what I've struggled with, is there anywhere that you can query automations in a base?
No.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
I would love to get a list of my automations.
Yeah. For me, like as a developer, right? The ideal scenario is that there's an API for everything, right? And I get that oftentimes this is just not feasible, but I think one really good approach that some products have is that they have an API and their user interface is using the same API as the like others, right? As the clients. And then they are sort of forced to actually improve the API. And in Airtable's case, as far as I know, this is not the case, right? So there is an internal API that the interfaces are using and the base are using, and then there is the web API that is for the others. But I think also like now in the age of AI, it also makes sense to have as big API coverage as possible, because then you can have agents do stuff for you. And there is definitely pitfalls, right? If there would be, for example, in API, you have an option to create a field, but not to delete the field. And it makes sense that there is no API for deleting the field, because an accidental deleting of the field leads to a disaster. But so there has to be limits, but creating automations with AI, like right away, you could use ChatGPT to create an automation, and you would get a lot of for free. But
the cynical answer to that is Airtable wants you to use Omni. They don't want you to use a third-party AI to do all of that. I don't know how far in advance they made that decision, because none of this was ever available via the API, even though it should have been. But I think Toddle, formerly known as Nordcraft, which is like a website, web app builder, is built out of itself, which I love. It's a great example of what you just described, of if you're going to build a product that makes things, make your product out of that thing. And then I've talked about Outseta a bunch. It's the platform I use to manage subscriptions for my services. And to subscribe to Outseta, I have an Outseta account, if that makes sense. They use their own subscription management thing to handle my subscription to sell subscriptions to other people. So they know the pain points of their own product, because they're, by the very nature of their business model, forced to use their own product.
Yeah. It'll be interesting, now these new wave of AI browsers are coming on board, where you have browsers that have agents built into them, and they can then interact with the client through the client interface. And I wonder how that will change things as far as like going through those browser agents. AI agents to interact with the client-facing API.
Right.
Yeah.
That will expose things because there's at one point we did a count of how many different versions of API or SDKs there are in Airtable between.
There's 2 for interfaces.
2 for interfaces.
Yes.
So you've got the scripting.
Well, if you count scripting, then there's 4. There's the scripting extension, scripting for automations, interfaces for the data layer, and interfaces for interfaces, or extensions for interfaces and extensions for the data layer.
Right. Yeah. So we've got all those. Then the REST API is different than the webhook API. There's a lot going on. Then we haven't even talked about, there's an audit log API that you could tap into with other things.
And there's a special carve out in the web API for Skim. It does a lot of the same things, but very differently.
Yeah. There's some enterprise only stuff. So and then there's the whole client where if you look under the hood of Airtable, you can see the network traffic, and so there's a whole API that the client communicates with Airtable's backend. It's pretty interesting as well. So a lot of moving parts, and they don't stay in sync. Like I was thinking about how you get the primary key name in the webhook. I doubt they've updated that for being able to change what field is your primary key that just came out a month or so ago. I doubt that's reflected in the webhook.
I still think you can't get, how you can name records in a table, like instead of calling them records, they're clients or their meetings or whatever. I don't think that's queryable anywhere. You can get the description, but you can't get the name of the records.
Yeah.
Right.
Except you can't get the base description. The base description doesn't come in the API.
Okay. Some of these Airtable
table
are a little silly.
So much that could be improved. And anyways, awesome. Thank you, Martin. How can people find you, especially this new product? Where's it at?
Yep. The website is at sync.powersafe.pro. So powersafe.pro is the Chrome extension, and the sync lives here at sync.powersafe.pro. Let me log out to see the landing page, and this is it. So so far there is the schema changelog. There is also a Slack engine, which is another interesting topic, but this is still in beta, and I have some work on Stripe integration as well, which is also still in beta. But the schema changelog is all well and ready to be used.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks for coming on, and good to see everybody. We will be back next week with our update on all the latest changes and feature releases. So we'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you.